Yo, what is up everybody, and welcome along to my 16 top tips for beginner producers. Now, why 16 you ask? I tried to aim for 10, discovered I had quite a bit more, but then I tried to aim for 20, but then I realized, actually no, I've got 16 solid ones. I don't have to round it up to 20. Now these tips cover different things from mixing to songwriting to a little bit of promotion as well. And yeah, I thought I'd just share these top tips. Now at number one would have to be the velocity notes on a MIDI piano. I hear many producers who do this and they just like leave the velocity on max for the piano, and it sounds a little bit too like staged and MIDI and just, I don't know, it's a bit stuck really. So for instance, if we have this nice little piano melody, it sounds a little bit too forced, but what we can go ahead and do is drag the velocity notes down, which is the pressure at which the notes are being played at. So like softly, softly, or loud, and it's currently loud, so we need to turn it down. Now if it's a good sample piano, it should change the tone of the notes as we make it quieter. So a lot softer, a lot nicer then. I mean, there's a time and a place, but for the most part. And then just turn up the volume after that because it's a bit quiet. So if you want a little bit more feel and character for your piano notes, drag the velocity down, see what happens. And coming in at number two, which probably should have been number one actually, is Sidechain. Now Sidechain is your best friend when it comes to producing, I guess, electronic music or a few other genres. I guess anything really. Don't have to limit it to electronic music, but it does sound amazing with EDM. So you might know the sound of it, but might not know how to accomplish this sound. It's basically the ducking of a sound in relation to another instrument or audio or whatever. For instance, we have a kick here. And we also have a bass line here. And it sounds like two sounds layered on top of each other, because that's exactly what it is. But if we add sidechain, it'll help glue this bass to the kick drum. We'll go ahead and drag a compressor onto the bass channel, click this arrow, sidechain input from the kick, which is number 3. Now you notice the bass is ducking in time with the kick. This helps clean up the mix, just make your drums a bit more punchy and glue your bass to your drums together. So if we want to actually see what's happening visually, if we compare our old bass, which is this one, with our new bass, which has like gaps right where the kick drum would come in. So there, 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 etc, etc. Now this is an extreme measure. I have quite a hard ratio and threshold, but if you want to subtly do it, the control's up to you how much you want to sidechain it, but yeah, sidechain is essential and it's a game changer. Right, now number 3 is if you have a processing chain such as this, utility, decreasing the width, changing the EQ, adding a little bit of denoise, a little bit of saturator, more EQ and compressor to fix the sound, not necessarily like make it grand and better, but to actually fix the sound and to get rid of errors. You might want to consider changing up the sample. Maybe that sample is not for you, or that bass, or the preset, or the patch, or whatever. Consider starting with a good foundation, which is a good sample. So if it was just like a weird percussion sound, maybe switch it up for another percussion sound and see if that sounds better. I mean, you'll save CPU in the long run. It'll just be easier because you've got the right sample to start with, etc, etc. So conclusion, if you need to fix it and it's going to take a bit of time, consider changing up the sample. You know the old famous saying, you can't polish a turd? Well, that goes with music production as well. And number 4, just because you have access to an EQ or a bunch of different EQs doesn't necessarily have to use them on every single channel. Some sounds sound great left alone with like no effects or whatever. Some sounds just need a little bit of compression. Not all of them need like Hundy's EQ to fit them into the mix. Now depending on the genre, maybe you might want to use more EQ than you have for a different genre, but most of the time do what's necessary, maybe cut out a few things, boost a couple of things a tiny bit, and then just leave it alone. If it sounds good in the mix, then maybe just leave it. If it sounds good solid by itself, but trash in the mix, then you might want to EQ it. Now if it sounds good in the mix, but trash by itself, I think I've got that around the right way, still leave it, because I mean, it sounds great in the mix. The listener's not listening to it soloed like you are, they're listening to the end result, which is like the stereo master. Think about it, if you don't need to use the EQ, then just don't use it. Don't use it for the sake of using an EQ. And now tip number 5, which I'm very guilty of using for the first couple of years when I started producing, which is leaving a limiter on the master. There's some instances where it's okay. I do it loads of times recording tutorials if I just need to catch the peaks. But if you're starting a track completely from scratch, you don't have the limiter on the master, because eventually what will happen is you'll be turning up tracks and you'll just be pushing against the limiter. It won't give a really accurate sound of what your track is actually sounding like, because then when you go to master it after, you've still got the limiter on, it's all squished and it's ugh. So yeah, just get into a habit of not using a limiter on your track while you're mixing it or making it, and then just save the limiting for the mastering process when you make your tracks louder. And speaking of loudness, tip number 6 is Just because it's louder doesn't necessarily mean it's better. For example, if you have a bunch of tracks in your session just making noise, doing what they do best, they're all sounding really loud and it's starting to go red, you know, redlining, headlining. Yeah, you might want to consider turning all the tracks down together at the same volume. So you just like select all and then turn them down. And so what you're doing is you're giving yourself more headroom, which then you can turn up your track louder. It's just another good habit to get into. If it's pushing into the red, maybe grab all your channels and just turn them down a bit, because yeah, louder isn't necessarily better in this case. Save the loudness for mastering. Tip number 7. Oh fuck. Tip number 7 is... That threw me off, man. Music basically has no rules. Just because it sounds silly in here, you don't know until you tried it. I'm thinking in my head right now, maybe 5 flanges on a kick drum. And now I'm thinking, that's a little bit stupid. I know what it's gonna do, and it's gonna sound a bit weird, but you don't know until you try it. Music production is all about creativity, just coming up with brand new ideas and seeing if they work. And you know, 5 flanges on a kick drum could work. Fuck it, we're gonna try it now. Now, I didn't know what 5 flanges on a kick drum sounded like before, but now I know what it sounds like, and it sounds freaking amazing. No, it does. But you know, now I know how it sounds like. It could have been an ingenious idea. It could have completely worked. I could have revolutionized the whole music industry with 5 flanges on the kick drum. Get creative is essentially this top tip. Tip number 8, reverb on your drums. If your drums are sounding a little bit dry and stale and they need a bit more like energy and warmth and pump to them, possibly consider adding a bit of reverb onto them. It'll help give them a bit more space, a bit more character, and more natural, I guess. I don't know. But reverb honestly helps with your drums. In some cases, it's cool to have like a completely dry, just normal drum sound. And in other cases, just like 80s reverb, that shit. Massive reverbs on the snare, who knows? So before, just normal sound. Reverb. Bit more space, bit more natural. You know what I'm saying. Tip 9, oh fuck, that's 8. Tip 9, back into the songwriting processes. Now, if you aren't comfortable with music theory or just starting out, a good scale to start out with is A minor. Instead of thinking like, oh, how can I fit it to the scale? Tone, semitone, tone, tone. No, just scratch that. And yeah, start with A minor, all the white keys, easy to remember, easy to look at, and just be like, okay, what note can I go to next? Alright, I've got all these different notes I can go to next. I don't have to like mentally think about it or study music theory, even though it's probably a good idea to study a bit of music theory. But like I said, if you're just starting out, A minor is a great scale to go to. Alright, we'll come to double digits. It's time for tip number 10, which is, say for example, if you just have like one vocal take, there's no like backing or ad-libs behind that, and you're pulling your hair out and you're thinking, how? I've got no backing, what am I gonna do? It might sound a bit weird just by itself. It's easy to create ad-libs in the background. You just need to listen to Jack Hugh and maybe think about shifting another instance of that same vocal an octave down and see what happens.
You won't bring me down.
We duplicate that.
You won't bring me down.
It gets louder, of course. Select warp and transpose it down 12 semitones.
You won't bring me down.
Complex, make it sound a bit better.
You won't bring me down. You won't bring me down.
You just got a double up layer now. It sounds pretty cool, it sounds pretty innovative, pretty straightforward. Don't know what to say about it now, so I'm gonna move on to the next tip. And now moving on to tip number 11. Now, my camera died and I didn't realize it, but you know, I'm doing a little voiceover. But tip number 11 goes like this. Why not shift the claps just a little bit left to give them a more natural feel? Not exactly on the grid, aligned with the kick drum, but just shifted a little bit to the left, like this. And with them not shifted, and now shifted. So yeah, hear the difference? Yeah, shifting them left is a little bit more natural. Don't get me wrong, some instances it sounds really cool when the clap is just perfectly on the kick. Quite a few house genres have that and it does sound mint. I'm not saying you must shift them right before the grid. I'm saying test it out, see if it works. If it does, cool. If it doesn't, cool. Maybe just put it back and see what happens. Now, number 12, we're coming towards the end. This one is a banger. When in doubt, just add a little bit more OTT. If your sound is a bit rough around the edges, it needs just a little bit more squeeze. If it needs a gentle hug, give it OTT. For instance, I don't know if the sound needs anything since it's mastered, but we're gonna put OTT on it anyway. Now, OTT stands for over the top. It's an Ableton multiband preset and it's also a plugin by itself made by Extra Records. Now, essentially, OTT just squishes the shit out of your sound, but in little amounts, it actually sounds really good, as well as big amounts. OTT works any way you want it to work, really. So, if we have it 100%, completely squished. But bring it back. A bit more compressed, a bit more squished, but it's just sounding good, and OTT does wonders. Try it in little amounts on basically anything you want, really, like vocals, drums, basses, synths, ambient, percussion. percussion sounds. OTD is definitely one of those effects which you can use in basically any sessions and it's gonna sound pretty cool. So yeah. Number 13, I hope, is if you want to make your sounds a little bit more wider, so a little bit more spread out in the mix, you can just use some simple plugins to help like push out the stereo width and just add a little bit more width. Sick. For instance, those plugins are maybe a bit of chorus. So we've got this kick drum, which is just mono, directly down the center. We need to push it out and make it a bit more wider. Oh my god, that's too wide. But you know, chorus is there. We can add a little bit more reverb as well. Make sure the stereo is cranked to 120 to make sure it's extra wide. And lastly, you can also use a little bit of ping pong delay, which is one of the personal favorites of mine, and just change the settings, drop the feedback, throw it how it is, turn the sync off and crank it up to like 40 maybe. Still a little bit too wide, we're getting some ping pongy delay. There we go. Now it's a little bit more wider, there's a couple of repetitions for each air. I'm pretty sure this effect goes by a specific name, but I can't think of it at the moment. No doubt somebody will comment on it below. So yeah, 3 easy effects just to like help boost the stereo image. Reverb, I've forgotten the other two already. Chorus and ping pong delay. So tip number 14 would be when in doubt, use the sausage pattern. Ow, my ear holes. Best production top tip ever. You know there had to be one meme one in there. And lastly, we come to tip 15 and 16, which is the music promotion related ones. Basically the rest was to do with production, but now it's to do with promotion of your track once you've finished it and you want to get it out there and get more fans, etc, etc. So my 2 top tips for music promotion would be, number 1 would be if you want to help build your audience, and the top places I would recommend would be music promotion channels or networks. This could be on SoundCloud or YouTube, vloggers for YouTube, and possibly Facebook as well. Bloggers, people who own their own blogs and maybe like review music, possibly even repost networks as well. I don't know, we've done a bunch of different articles on music promotion, where to send your music to and the good places. Link will be in the description for that. Yeah, I think we've got a couple of articles about that, so I'll post a couple of links in the description for that if you want to check that out. And my second top tip for music promotion would be, don't get discouraged if people come back saying they don't want to use your music or they just don't reply at all. I know it can be a hard thing to hear if it's just off-putting. The best thing to do after you take that is maybe if they give you advice, see if you think it's good advice. The best thing to do after that is just double down, get back in the studio, keep making your music better and better and improving every single day. You never stop learning with music production. And on top of that as well, send it to other different promotion networks and channels and distribution things you could possibly send to who would accept your music. It's not the end just because one person decides not to use your music. There's plenty of other ways you can get your music heard and famous. The author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, the first Harry Potter she sent to a bunch of different publishers, they all said no, and then finally one took her up on it, and next thing you know, bestsellers and movies and shit like that and sequels now. So you know, it's not the end of the world if a few channels don't reply to your emails or aren't keen on releasing it. And then you know, you just gotta keep working on your music and just enjoy doing it basically. I think that's a lengthy ass video. Anyway, hopefully you enjoy this new kind of format style and the new background as well. If you have any other top tips for beginner music producers, maybe leave them below. I'll pin a comment, maybe rotate a few pinned comments, see how it goes. So if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a big thumbs up. It would mean a lot. Have a great day, guys, and I'll catch you on the next video or tutorial, whatever we're doing on this channel. Have a great day, guys. I've already said that. Yeah, bye.